As Jews, we always have many questions. For those who are especially discovering Judaism for the first time, whether you're Jewish from birth or not, there are many things that you're going to find out that may be very strange, very different than what you're accustomed to. And as Jews, we're always learning. One does not finish learning. One is always learning throughout his life, discovering new things. But hopefully what he will discover will only strengthen what he received when he was a student, when he was growing up. It will only strengthen his faith and not undo or weaken his faith. It is important for a Jew to continuously learn because there are many influences out there, many forces that try to weaken, that try to alienate him, take him away from those strong beliefs. And the more we know, the better we will be prepared to defend ourselves, the more clarity we will have as to what the purpose of life is, what we're doing here, what's the reason for everything that we observe, whether it's an earthquake, or whether it's a war, or whether it's suffering of those that appear to us to be innocent people. There's so many things going on in the world, and there really are many questions. And questions produce doubts, produce weakness, produces hesitancy in many people in wanting to do the right thing because of uncertainties. So it is very important to go through, to review some of these questions, some of the issues that you may have asked already, that you may have some doubts about. And in doing so, we will hopefully have a better understanding of what it means to be Jewish and what Judaism is all about. It is very possible that from just one question you may not be convinced of whatever it is that you need convincing of, because it is only after perhaps hearing all the 70 questions one will have a better idea. It is not because the 70 are connected, but because when one hears all that there is to hear, it will help them understand the whole picture. It's like reading a book. You cannot jump to chapter 3 without going through chapter 1 and reading the whole thing to get a better understanding of what the story is all about. This time, what I'm doing a little bit different than 9 years ago is that I'm trying to go in order, as much as possible in a certain order. So for those of you who joined us in the very beginning, we spoke about creation, and then I presented the other side, the side that proposes evolution. Then we went on to speak about the age of the earth, the purpose of creation, and so forth. And I really am convinced that whoever is able to participate or hear the recordings of all 70 or so lectures plus some additional lectures, it will be like going through Gemarot, Zohar, Midrashim, and a vast amount of Jewish literature that will really prepare you to be able to confront just about any issue with having the right outlook, the healthy outlook, the outlook that our forefathers had of being very confident of who we are and what we're doing here. Even though not all our parents and grandparents were knowledgeable in every aspect of Torah, nevertheless, somehow it was in their blood, in their genes, a certain confidence, a certain sincerity, and resolve that this was so true that no matter what you said to them and how much pressure they had to undergo, it would not shake them from their beliefs. And I think that B'ezrat Hashem, you will see, after many lectures, you will be stronger. You will feel better, you will have a better understanding, and you will be able to confront the issues out there, whether you're facing an atheist or you're facing a relative who is not so strong as you are, and you will be able to help him. You'll be able to guide him only because you are more knowledgeable than he is. Tonight's question is a very different kind of a question, but as you will see, it's related to all the other questions, because what we're trying to do is trying to understand the difference between what Judaism has to say and what science has to say, or what other cultures have to say, about some very unusual topics as well. Our quest is to know what the Torah has to say, and that is, of course, what matters to us. And therefore, even though the question may be trivial, you will see at the end that it's not so trivial after all, and that is why I put this question, I included it in the 70 questions, and that is, whatever happened to the dinosaurs? You might think, oh, why is this question so important? Why is the question of what happened to the dinosaurs so important? Anybody want to suggest why this would be an important question to ask? What do you think I had in mind when I put this question together?
Because dinosaurs are known to be millions of years old, and in Judaism we say that the Earth is only
right, because one of the issues that one faces in dealing with the question of dinosaurs is the age of the Earth, which we've covered already. But in confronting scientists, or in confronting those that have a scientific mind, or who have read so much science, that is exactly one of the issues that they will have to deal with. Is millions of years supposedly have gone by since dinosaurs were on Earth. And if that's the case, how do we reconcile that with what the Torah teaches, or what our tradition says, that the world is only 5,767 years old? So this is exactly what happens with this kind of questions. The reason I'm bringing it up is because you will have to face those that attempt to attack Judaism from different angles. One angle is what you said, the angle of the age of the Earth being millions of years according to scientists, and they say so based on all sorts of theories, nothing concrete, no real proof. And other ideas that may come across some of those who are not so believers is that there are certain facts that perhaps the rabbis were unaware of. You know, this is not mentioned in the Gemara, it's not mentioned in the Midrash, it's not mentioned in Torah. Perhaps the rabbis did not know everything, and here we discovered something that they were unaware of. So another angle will be facts, unknown facts, what appear to be unknown facts to the rabbis, or olamot acherim. What others may suggest is that perhaps there were other worlds, which I have already mentioned in the past, that we should not take literally the saying of the Zohar, Sheboneh olamot u'machrivan, means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created many worlds. There was a world once upon a time of dinosaurs, and it no longer exists, and that is not a contradiction to the Torah, you know. But as I said before, that is not to be taken literally. Worlds that are mentioned over there are spiritual worlds. There was no other world as far as our tradition says. It's only one world. Nevertheless, this is just another angle, another point that somebody might raise. There's also the problem of the theories that are presented as to what caused their extinction, the extinction of the dinosaurs, what brought about their extinction. And because of the theories that are mentioned by the scientists, those theories may have a problem, or may not be compatible with what the Torah teaches. So when that comes up, we have to be prepared. How do we deal with their theories or their explanations? And there are other points that may present what appears to be a contradiction between Torah and science. So what I decided to do this time around is, B'ezrat Hashem, at some point, I will present a lecture on how there is no contradiction between science and Torah, which we haven't really done before. You may have heard this lecture from others, but it's very interesting to see that, contrary to what many believe, science only reinforces what the Torah says, as long as we're dealing with real facts, facts that can be proven, sound information, that which has been proven beyond any doubt. That which is still theory or is just an opinion is of course not worth anything. But science does demonstrate what the rabbis always knew, what the Torah has always said. So there's really no contradiction. But when a subject like dinosaurs surfaces, many people think that this presents a problem. And that's what we will be talking a little bit about tonight, how it's definitely not a problem. We do know, it's a fact, there are many fossils to prove it, that dinosaurs did exist. They have found almost complete skeletons of all forms of dinosaurs, whether it's in the reptile or bird, mammals. They find them all over the world. So nobody can deny their existence. The question, of course, remains is what happened to them? And could it be that this was millions of years ago? Well, the issue or the question of millions of years ago, we've already addressed. That did not happen millions of years ago, because the world is not millions of years old. Even though there are some opinions, and I'll repeat them, that every day of creation was more than 24 hours, but okay, so let's say it's 1,000. Alright? It's definitely not millions of years. And scientifically, the most accurate method of measuring the age of the Earth is, we said, was carbon-14 dating, and that also has a limitation of about 50,000 years. So millions of years is definitely not part of the formula here. So as far as the age of the dinosaurs, that we're not going to talk about tonight, because it's understood, from our tradition at least, that these animals that existed once upon a time did coexist with human beings. And I'm really hoping that one of these days they will find a human skeleton together with a dinosaur skeleton. The problem is that the die-hard scientists are going to say that somebody in the middle of the night snuck up and buried that human skeleton next to the dinosaur. So it's going to be hard to convince the die-hard scientists who do not want to accept anything other than the fact that they've already made up their mind that scientists were millions of years before human beings came about. That's because if you say that humans lived together with scientists, with dinosaurs, then of course that's going against their theory of evolution. That first dinosaurs came about, and then everything else after that. So of course it would shake up their theory completely. So they are going to completely deny it. But I still hope that one of these days they will find it. Anyway, so why is this such a big question? What happened to the dinosaurs? It shouldn't be such a big question at all. I can give you a list of hundreds of animals. Literally, if you look it up in the internet and encyclopedia, there's a long list of animals that once lived and no longer are around. They're called prehistoric animals or extinct animals. So what's the big deal? Animals become extinct. Animals have become extinct all the time. Go to the La Brea Tar Pits Museum. You will not see dinosaurs in this particular museum, but you will see prehistoric animals that actually lived here, in this area, in these streets, including mammoths and mastodons, saber-toothed tiger, and all sorts of animals that are no longer around as far as we can tell. Maybe there's one hiding somewhere, but from what we can tell, they're no longer around. That's okay. That's possible. So what's the chidush? What's the question? Why is it such a difficult question? What happened to the dinosaurs? They became extinct too, just like any other animal. Since we're talking about prehistoric animals, I want to remind you that there are some that are very interesting, that are brought down in our tradition. One of them is the Shamir, not Yitzhak Shamir, the Prime Minister of Israel, but the Shamir was a very unique worm with which they cut the stones of the Bet HaMikdash. It was like a laser. You just placed the worm on the stone and it just sliced through the stone. No machinery, no hammers, no nothing. It was an incredible thing. According to our tradition, that Shamir is around somewhere, but nignaz. It's been put away. Nobody knows where it is. It was there for a purpose. Right now it's not needed. Nobody has to know where it is. There was the Tachash. The Tachash was a very unique, multicolored animal that was used for the tabernacle, for the Mishkan. The hides, the multicolored hides. Nobody knows what animal it was, because that animal was no longer around. It was only there for the Mishkan. We had a very interesting animal called the Yadua, the Yid'oni, or as the Mishnah calls it, Adnei HaSadeh. Masechet Kilayim, you will find an animal that is attached to the ground from its umbilical cord. And you cannot move too far. Very, very wild animal. And it looks a little bit like a human being. The bone of this animal was used for witchcraft or to communicate with the dead. Very interesting animal. Where is this animal? Nobody knows. Nobody has seen it, but it's maybe still around. It's called Adnei HaSadeh. You had other animals too. You have something called the mermaid. Everybody heard of the mermaid? Half woman, half fish. They think it's just a myth, but it's mentioned in the Gemara too. It's not just a myth. People have seen it off the coast of Massachusetts in the 1800s. It's been seen here and there. The mermaid. It's not just a fairy tale, not just a myth. It's mentioned, right? Where is it? Somewhere in the deep oceans. You think they discovered everything? Every year they discover thousands of new organisms. And one of these days they may discover something that they thought was extinct. That happens too once in a while. They rediscover something. How about the unicorn? Unicorn was some animal that looked perhaps like a horse that had one big horn. What's the big deal? It could be. There was such an animal. There were many similar animals, and these animals have become extinct, just like the animals that you will see in the museum. It's not a problem. So what's the big problem of dinosaurs? Why are we so, or at least why are the scientists so puzzled But what happened to the dinosaurs? The big question with dinosaurs is because apparently, from what scientists can tell, they've become extinct at once, in a very short time, all of them together. This is of course proven scientifically. It's not just a theory. It appears to them very clear that somehow something happened that destroyed all the dinosaurs at once in a very short period of time, and that bothers them because they can't figure out what this could be. They have no clues. Well, they have some evidence, but it's not really concrete. Nothing has really been proven till this very day. If you look up dinosaurs, read about them, there's nobody that will tell you for sure this is what happened. There's basically two opinions in science as to what happened. Why did the dinosaurs disappear? One is tremendous cataclysmic climatic changes. You already have heard of the Ice Age, all sorts of major changes to the climate that caused about their destruction. It became very, very cold. Well, what happens when it becomes very cold? Either the animal cannot survive or it cannot find enough food, and that's how they died. How did this tremendous climate changes occur? So some say through major volcanic activity. The other theory is even more grandiose. It claims that there was a big meteor that penetrated, or an asteroid that penetrated the Earth and brought about the destruction, mass extinction of all these animals. Now, what's the problem with these two theories? According to our position, according to the Torah, we have no tradition that there was a major climatic change that brought about such loss of life and mass extinction of animals, because according to our tradition, if human beings coexisted with all animals, then we're still around, monkeys are still around, all the other animals are still around. Why didn't they disappear? Why only the big guys, right? So therefore we have a problem with saying that this was the major cause for the extinction of the dinosaurs. Now, there was a change in the climate and in the atmosphere. According to what the Torah says, it's very clear that the atmosphere before the Mabul was very different than the atmosphere after the Mabul, after the major flood. People lived longer before the Mabul. The whole climate was very, very different. It was a subtropical climate all over the world. There was no North Pole and South Pole, cold and hot. It was pretty much even all over the world. So that, of course, did happen with the Mabul, with the major flood. But that this would bring about the mass extinction of the dinosaurs, it doesn't say that anywhere. How about the meteorite or the asteroid? It is mentioned in the Gemara just the opposite. It is mentioned in the Gemara that HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects the earth from an invasion of any large massive body outside in space, because there is something called the asteroid belt, and there are many comets traveling in a few million miles away from Earth, but they never get too close. Now, almost on a daily basis, there are meteorites and shooting stars falling onto this planet. Small, very small ones. Some bigger, some small, but they don't do any damage. Some say that there was a major explosion. Well, it's a fact that there was a major explosion, I think it was 1908 in Siberia, in the area called Tunguska, which caused about much destruction of the forest, and many animals were killed, and they don't really know till today what it was. But it was such a massive explosion that the only thing that they can figure the closest it could be was some meteor that crashed into this earth. But even that was small, relatively. To cause the mass extinction of dinosaurs, we don't know of anything. Even though there are craters, there is a big crater in Arizona, and there is what they call in Israel Machtesh, which is also a crater in southern Israel. We don't really know what it's from, but even if it is from an asteroid or from something, it's not big enough to cause major destruction all over the world. And what they claim landed on this earth would have been tremendous. And according to our tradition, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not allow that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not interested in destroying His world. Once upon a time it happened that He brought about a big flood, and after that He swore that there will no longer be a major flood that will bring destruction to the entire world. There will be other natural disasters, but they will be local, nothing that will affect the entire globe. He's not interested in destroying His earth, His creation. So therefore, any one of these theories is not really acceptable to us. So what do we say brought about the extinction of the dinosaurs? The most likely scenario is what brought about the extinction of other animals, and that is either through overhunting or through hunger and disease. That explains on a superficial level why certain animals died. Again, on a superficial level, disease, hunger, overhunting, this happens all the time. There are a lot of animals today that are in the endangered list. You will hear it all the times in the news that they're trying to protect the owl in Oregon, and they're trying to protect the wolf in Montana, and they're trying to protect the bear in Alaska, because they are endangered. So that is a possibility. These factors do contribute to the lessening of the numbers of a lot of species. But most likely, in my humble opinion, most likely the greatest factor that contributed to the destruction of these large animals, the dinosaurs, are 3 major floods. Now you hear 3, you're surprised. I thought there was only one big flood, the Mabul. Yes, there was one major flood that the Torah records, and that is the Mabul of Mei Noach, which according to the Torah covered the entire surface of the earth and reached to the highest peaks. And that was a major body of water with tremendous pressure that caused tremendous destruction, that everything that was not in the boat of Noach died, perished. Very simple. Besides this Mabul, the Midrash says something very interestingly that most people are unaware of. But it's also a very important detail, that before the Mabul, Bimei Enosh, and after the Mabul, during the Dora Palaga, there were 2 major floods, that the ocean, and one of them, flooded 1/3 of the earth, 1/3. And the ocean, the second time around, flooded 2/3 of the earth. And based on this Midrash, it is very easy to understand what the Mediterranean Sea is. The Mediterranean Sea really is a big swimming pool. That's all it is. Because what happened was when the floodwaters receded, you had all this water remaining in this big valley. How did this valley form? Well, it is very possible, according to another Midrash, that the Mabul, the big Mabul, caused major geological changes. As the Midrash says, the earth became Harim Utrashim, became very hilly, mountainous, and very rugged terrain. Canyons were formed. And as a result of that, you have something called the Grand Canyon. All the scientists and all the geologists clearly admit that the Grand Canyon did not just come about by itself. I mean, if you ever go there and see the incredible colors and layers and shapes, you can tell something very, very big happened over here that brought this about. But what's interesting is not just the colors and the shapes, it is the animals, the amphibians, the fish that were found, not just there, but in the Malibu Mountains, up in the hills. What are fish doing on top of the mountains? Because if the water reached that level, then obviously that's where they landed. So there's a lot of ample proof all over that there was a Mabul. Not only was there a Mabul, but the major forces of the various floods that I just mentioned, together perhaps, or individually, brought about another incredible change to the earth. And that is the drifting of the continents. You may have heard of the concept called Continental Drift, that not everybody agreed. But today just about all the scientists agree. You just look at a globe and you see how the continents fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. How Africa and South America go together. You can just take a look at the globe and you can see for yourself how most continents go together. So this is called Continental Drift. How did this come about? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, when you read Parashat Bereshit, you will see that there's only one mass of land. The Tera'eh HaYabasha. Let the land mass surface, and the water was around it. So there was really only one continent. Hashem had no reason to create pieces of land, New Zealand here, Antarctica here, Australia here, North and South America, and we're going to make Panama very, very small, very slim. Right? It doesn't make a sense. And all these islands scattered everywhere, and Hawaii, and So we know that there is volcanic activity all the time. We know that there are islands being formed all the time. So there's certain actions that we can actually see today. But over years, and especially when you introduce major action like the floods, the 3 floods, and the big Mabul, then it is possible that because of all this action, all of this continental drift occurred, and things scattered everywhere, and this contributed also to the mass extinction of the dinosaur species. But that leads us to the next question. Okay, we can understand that these forces of nature are very destructive, right? But who says that this is what brought about the extinction of the dinosaurs? Maybe it was something else. If you go to the La Brea Tar Pits Museum, you'll see something very interesting, very different. Why is it called La Brea? La Brea in Spanish means the tar. Brea is tar. The tar pits, there's a lot of tar. And they claim because of all the tar there, I really encourage that you go if you've never been there. It's an incredible museum as to the discoveries, not as to their opinions or conclusions, but the discoveries. You will find many skeletons of animals that are today extinct. They claim that they got stuck there in the tar. The elephant got stuck, and the wolf came to eat the elephant, and the wolf got caught. Well, once the wolf got caught, the vulture came to try to eat the wolf, and that's how so many animals got caught in one place in the tar. They sank, and they couldn't get out of it, and they died there. It's funny. I don't think it's true. But that's what they claim. They have no other explanation why so many animals in one place. If you read a little bit about discoveries of dinosaurs, you will find something incredible. First of all, you will find them in the highest of mountains and peaks. What are they doing there? You will find many of them, like an entire graveyard of a particular dinosaur or dinosaurs in one place. Why so many in one place? There's so many indications that they were in a rush to get out. Other indications that a tremendous amount of pressure fell on them because it left them in one position, stuck to where they were. They found intact eggs of dinosaurs that somehow, in order for all of this to be fossilized, remember over time everything falls apart. Even bones falls apart over time. When something becomes a fossil, when something becomes preserved, it is either because of the cold, like elephants in Siberia, mammoths that were preserved in the cold intact, with the flesh, either because of the cold or because of some other force in nature that immediately covered it up, did not allow for any predators to eat it. In order for them to find entire skulls and skeletons, there had to be a sudden impact, sudden pressure, and tremendous pressure, which could only have been the Mabul, or the waters. What else could it be? And in such locations like on the top of a mountain, and entire graveyards of them, entire graveyards, what did they all go to the same place to die? Yeah.
You said sudden pressure.
Yeah.
I thought it was eventual rain. It just kept raining and raining and raining. Why would that be sudden pressure? Why would it be eventual?
Well, depending on where they were, there was steady rain, but all of a sudden, depending on where you were, if you have a mass body of water coming in, remember I said besides that, you're talking about the regular Mabul, the steady rain, which after caused the water level to rise, but I also mentioned the two other floods, and flooded the world twice. Once 1/3, the other time 2/3 of the globe were covered with water. Then it receded. Then you have the Mabul too in between. So you have major bodies of water suddenly covering a lot of territory. Okay.
What is the truth about the theory that the oil that we have today is a result of accumulation of many animals in one place?
That's a good question. We talked a little bit about that before. The theory that the oil is a byproduct of the decay of plants and animal, the decay of vegetation. It's possible that some oils and fats are as a result of the decay, but our opinion is, our tradition says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created et ha'olam b'tzivyono. B'tzivyono means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it ready, with everything that it needed to have at the time, with all the minerals. At the moment of creation, everything was ready. So oil and gas and minerals, whether it's diamond, gold, silver, copper, all of these were there from the beginning of creation. It was not that over time these things formed. Just like all the fruit trees were there, all the grasses and all the species of all the animals, birds are there, even though today they are making all sorts of generic things and combining two animals that are of the same species but are a little bit different to produce something else. Even though that they can do that, it's not something completely brand new. The original species and the original material was always there from the very beginning, including petroleum. Even though it's possible that through the decay and through the various other forces of nature, some other byproducts would be formed. But as they say themselves, that in order for that to really happen naturally, it would take a long time. It would take many, many years. Like to make carbon or to make diamonds, it would take tremendous amount of heat and time. But we don't need all that heat and time if Hashem created everything ready-made. Just like the Midrash says, when He created Adam HaRishon, the first human being, he was not a baby. He was approximately 20 years old. He was ready-made. He was mature. We did not have to wait. The same is true about the other questions. What about the light from the stars? If the stars are trillions of years away, trillions of miles away, or many light years away, right? Then it must be that the world is older than 5,767, because it takes so many years for the light of the stars to come to us. Yeah, if Hashem is the creator of the world, He can create the light coming to the earth on the spot. There's no problem. Once you believe in creation is very clear to you, then all of this makes a lot of sense. We don't need millions of years to have all of this form. So the fact that we have many, many animals, many dinosaurs, whether it's here in La Brea Tar Pits or in other areas of North America, like in the Dakotas, in Montana, in Wyoming, where you'll find entire graveyards of dinosaurs, it's interesting. What are they doing there? Why are there so many? But once you understand the forces behind the Mabul and the floods, you can appreciate how this happens. Yeah.
That it traveled in flocks like animals do today.
Oh yeah, sure.
So,
of course, that's the idea. They were in flocks. They were together, but nevertheless, we still have to explain why they died in the same place. But you are right. In order for them to be in one area, it must be, as it is explained in some of the scientific journals, that many of them were traveling in flocks or herds. That's a good point, yeah.
If the world didn't have so many mountains at that time,
right,
how could the world be flooded 2/3 and 1/3? What would stop the water?
One more time, if there was what?
If there weren't mountains, different elevations,
Right,
many years ago, okay?
right.
Why and how could the world be flooded 2/3 and then 1/3? What would stop the 2/3 from going to the other third, and vice versa?
Well, first of all, it is possible, very possible, that there was some elevation difference, but not the very high peaks, not the Himalaya range and all this that we have today. But as far as stopping, Hashem could have stopped it at this point and said, you know what, the water is not going beyond this point. I only wanted to flood till here, and I don't want it to affect the people who are living over there in the Far East. So I'm only going to have the waters go all the way to Egypt or all the way to Israel and then recede back. And the other flood may have gone even beyond that point, may have gone all the way to India and then recede, but not have touched China, which is at the very Far East, at the other end. In other words, Hashem could have decided how far the waters go, regardless of the elevation of the land.
So when Shlomo HaMelech said there's nothing new under the sun, what you're really saying is that Adam HaRishon named all the dinosaurs when he named the cow and the ox and the donkey, he named the dinosaurs too, that they pre-existed Adam HaRishon.
Yeah, well, that leads us to the next question. Did Noach take in the dinosaur in the Teva? And how could it be? He didn't fit.
in the roof.
What?
On the roof.
The roof? What's the answer to that? Very simple. He took the babies. He didn't have to take the adults. He took the babies. He didn't have to take the largest animals of the cows, the largest deer, the largest lions. He could have taken the cubs. He could have taken the babies. He didn't have to take the largest ones. Yeah.
And part of what made me a silly question is,
Yeah.
nobody else had a boat at the time that Noah was there. Nobody else. There weren't other countries that had mercantile fleets.
They didn't believe. They didn't believe that there was going to be a major
Started
flood.
raining at some point. You get a
Yeah.
boat.
Apparently they were not prepared. Yeah. They were not really prepared, and it took him by surprise. It was pretty quick. Remember, it was not just rain coming down from above, it was also the waters from below coming up. So they were surrounded with water very quickly.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So they did not really have time.
So that is our tradition, dinosaurs were on the Teva, Rabbi?
Well, it says that he took from every species at least two.
Who's to say, though, that they weren't extinct by then?
Nobody. It's very possible that many of them, not all of them, were already extinct. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now when we talk about why become extinct to begin with. Why should Hashem allow that? I'll talk a little bit about that point. Yeah.
I just remember reading, and I think it was Noah, that there was a ram that was huge, enormous, so like the large pieces.
Yeah, there are Gemarot that talk about very large animals. There is the Midrash about the Leviathan. But we don't take that literally. We don't understand what that means, And of course, there's also the midrash that in Eretz Yisrael there was no flood, so maybe it was there. But the very, very, very large animals that are described in the Gemara and elsewhere, we don't understand if that is to be taken literally or not. If it's a midrash, it could have a symbolic meaning and not be taken literally. So now we've come to another important question. Okay, so things can become extinct. Some animals have become extinct. It's a fact that these animals existed. But why would God allow animals to become extinct? After all, He created them for a reason. He wants them here. And you know what? Everything has a purpose. Cockroaches too. Mice. All those that you don't like and you don't want to have them in your home, we still have a need for them. There's a purpose. They were created. David HaMelech found that out very, very quickly, when he couldn't understand what the purpose of a spider is until he was protected by the web, because the web was covering the entrance to a cave where he was hiding from Shaul. Had that web not been there, Shaul would have entered, would have searched for him in the cave. But seeing that big web, he says, "Oh, he's not in there. That web's been around for a while." That is how he found out that there's even a need for a spider. A spider, obviously, is one of the creations of Hashem that has a purpose. So everything has a purpose, so why would Hashem allow these things to become extinct?
They serve their purpose.
What?
They have served their purpose.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Is it possible that perhaps they've already served their purpose and they're no longer necessary? Yeah, very definitely, very possible. It is definitely a possibility that certain animals are no longer necessary. How do we know? From the Tachash itself, from the Shamir that I mentioned earlier. Just like these animals are no longer seen, and we know that they did not become extinct, we just know that they were there for a reason, then Hashem says, these animals have served their purpose. And dinosaurs are also dangerous. These large animals very soon are going to be in the way of human beings that are going to begin to procreate, and therefore they're going to interfere. So just like in ecology we learned that there is an ecosystem or a certain chain where certain animals depend on others, perhaps once they disappeared, then those that needed them or those that depended on them also disappeared, little by little, since they have, like you said, served their purpose. That's definitely a possibility. But what I want to talk about is a little bit about the more simplistic explanation as to why extinction occurs. If you read Parashat Bereshit, you will find that the fish were blessed. The fish, of all creation, besides human beings, the fish were blessed. Why were the fish blessed? Because they are hunted. And not only are they hunted, they are over-hunted. Billions of tons of fish every year, especially the Japanese with the sushi. You know how much fish they catch? That sooner or later, everybody's afraid, we're going to run out of fish. But I can assure you, we're not going to run out of fish. Whales, maybe certain whales, but not fish. Fish have a beracha. And since fish have a beracha, we're not going to run out of fish. They're going to multiply, and they will lay thousands of eggs all over the place, that even if you catch 1 or 2 or 100 or 1,000, before you know it, they will resupply the oceans very quickly. So that's not a problem. It's not a problem for the fish, that is. But it is a problem for other animals who don't have the beracha, who don't have a blessing. Which means what? If animals don't have a blessing, it is very possible that they can become extinct. Because only the fish receive the beracha. And therefore, if something happens, whether by human intervention, or by disease, overhunting them, or hunger, whatever it is, some cataclysmic event, earthquakes, forest fires, it is possible. It is possible that nature will take its toll, and that certain animals will become extinct. So over the years, all sorts of animals that were not so abundant, like perhaps deer, cats, dogs, have become subjected to certain events that have taken a toll on their species, and therefore have become extinct. That's basically what explains it. You don't have to get into major theories of asteroids, of comets, of the ice age, of climatic changes, bringing about extinction. They were only concerned about the fact that it was obvious to them that it happened with the dinosaurs almost at once. That is what was really bothering them. And we explained the reason why it happened at once, because obviously it is due to some major global event, which is not comets, asteroids, or climate change. It's more to do with the floods. And like you suggested too, it is very possible that with time, either right before the Mabul or after the Mabul, including the forces of the Mabul, Hashem says, you know what, these don't have to exist. There's no real need for them anymore. They serve their purpose, whatever their purpose was, we don't really know. They definitely serve their purpose because they were created for a purpose. They already serve their purpose, that there's no need for them. The world is changing. After the Mabul, it's somewhat of a different kind of world. And little by little, not necessarily at once, maybe there were some still around, maybe not T-Rex, and maybe not the larger ones, maybe the birds, who knows. Maybe some of them were still around. What I think is that it's very possible that they were around till not too long ago, till even a couple hundred years ago. The reason for that is that there is an opinion that holds that all the myths that talk about dragons. You heard about dragons? What are dragons? Is it just a myth? No, it could be the dragons were a description of various kinds of reptiles, dinosaurs, that appear in many cultures. Some with fire coming out of the mouth, possibly, because in our own tradition there are such animals. There are very strange animals reported by Jewish travelers. Marco Polo was not Jewish, but he also reports on seeing all of these large birds that almost ate his caravan, attacked them. Animals or birds that we don't hear about, we don't see today. So it could be till not too long ago, till a couple hundred years ago, there were some birds or some animals out there that are no longer around. So it is possible that they did not completely become extinct altogether, but the majority of them maybe died off in the Mabul or right after the Mabul as well. Just like to finish with an important point is that even though we've explained a little bit about how the forces of nature can take a toll, and how there is a tradition in Judaism about Mabul and floods that may explain how certain animals became extinct, but it's important for us also to remember that the human being in himself is capable of destroying himself, is capable of destroying the world, as become evident, unfortunately, nowadays with the nuclear bomb. So man himself is the most dangerous animal of all, in that he can bring about his own destruction. He can cause tremendous damage to this globe with the greenhouse effect, with the hole in the ozone. All of this, what you hear, there's definitely some truth to it. The smog is obvious to us because we breathe the air, we see the damage that we're doing with the garbage that's going into the oceans, in the water, everywhere. The contamination. So there's no doubt that the human being is to blame for a lot of the destruction that is going on today. He is capable of destroying, unfortunately, himself and the world. And his job really is l'avda l'shomra. He was given the job as a partner in creation to really preserve the earth, to guard it, to keep it a beautiful place. That is his responsibility. When it comes to animals, even though he was given the right and the authority to reign, to rule over them, he has to be careful not to cause them any pain, not to inflict pain. That's called Tsar Balei Chaim. The Torah is against inflicting unnecessary pain to an animal unless your life is in danger, or unless you need it for your own consumption, your own personal use. Then you have permission to use it. But really, in reality, if human beings were really decent people, would behave themselves, would follow the Torah, would follow Hashem's plan, then they would not be attacked by animals. The shark would not go after the human being. He would leave him alone, because the human being was created in the image of God. The animal is supposed to fear him. Man is the crown of creation. He is supreme. The fact that animals are not afraid of us is not a good sign. It's because we have lost that image of Hashem. Yes?
But what about the theory about prehistoric men, like Cro-Magnon men and Neanderthal men? How do we reconcile them at all? Does the Torah recognize there was such?
Okay, that's an excellent question too. Thank you for bringing it up, because that's been in the news recently again, and from time to time they bring it up in the papers about Neanderthal. I always forget how to pronounce it. Cro-Magnon. Yeah, Neanderthal. There's an ongoing discussion among scientists whether it represents a separate species or subspecies. Did they ever meet these two kinds? Because it is obvious that their shape of the skulls are different. We know that there's only one kind of human being. However, the Gemara is very clear that human beings are fashioned by the geographical location of where they brought up. And that includes the shape of the skull, the height, the color of the hair. Nevertheless, it is very interesting that these particular skulls are quite different, much more radically different than the rest. And it is possible that it has to do with other reasons. There is a midrash that a certain generation of people became monkeys in the very beginning, turned to monkeys, or something close to looking like an ape. And maybe many of those skulls that they're finding today are that. It's definitely not an evolution in the transformation between ape to man. That never happened, because we still have apes and we still have human beings today. But nevertheless, it is possible that because of disease or because of other deformations brought about by what they did, that they become what they become. As I explained, the geographical location has a lot to do with how people look. People that grow up in colder weather developed certain perhaps skin and deformations perhaps in their coloration of their hair, of the body, and fish that have been living in caves have been shown to become blind over time. That's not a macroevolution. It's called a microevolution due to the location of where it is. So it is possible that these human beings developed somewhat differently because of the location and because of what they were exposed to. But I definitely don't believe that there are different species. There was always one species, and even today there is quite a vast difference between human beings. The only reason why human beings are more similar today is because there's a lot of intermarriage, and it could be that at that point, if human beings were living far apart and there was less intermarriage, then they kept the differences were more obvious. But that basically explains the differences in the skulls or in the way they look, not that it's some other species. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem, in the coming weeks we'll be talking about human being. We've talked about animals, we've talked about creation, and the next topics will deal with the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama of the creation called Adam, the creation called human being. What his purpose is in life is. We talked about the purpose of creation. Now we have to go on to the human being who is the crown of creation. What is his job in this world? So B'ezrat Hashem, in the coming weeks we'll cover that.